Hello everyone, and welcome to the showcase of my second ForHonor character. As for the first, you can check it right here, and do tell me if you'd like to see more, especially if it's a guest character from another video game. But for now, let's get on with this hero. Again, I apologize for the bad animations, and I'm going to ask you to imagine that the sword that I'm holding right now would be 3 times as big and thick as opposed to the one that I'm holding. So, let's begin. Hero name, Fallen. He is a Knight Vanguard, and the point of even making this hero in the first place was to have a knight that wielded a true greatsword, because Warden and Warmonger, the way they use their swords is just... it doesn't feel like their weapons have real weight, you know? And they sometimes swing their big swords with one hand, like what even is that? I would also like to have a ForHonor character inspired by Guts, because who wouldn't? This character will revolve around big heavy swings, trading a lot of damage, and half swording sometimes. And even if I plan to give this hero a really cool and also deep moveset, his feats are what's going to make him real fun and special. So, I will go over the basic moves, in-chain moves, stance moves, punches, and lastly, why and how everything in his moveset fits together. From neutral. His lights are enhanced and have the biggest hitbox in the entire game. His heavies are 900 MS and have hyper armor, meaning you can't punish a guard break with them. To account for that, his neutral zone is actually as fast as your average heavy. It deals 24 damage and is also feintable, but it doesn't have any hyper armor. When doing a dodge attack or roll catcher, he can choose between a dodge light and a dodge heavy. The light has a longer reach, but the heavy has a wider hitbox. His neutral heavies can be charged, and if you fully charge them from the side, Fallen will do an unblockable Dark Souls uppercut which will throw the enemy far away. It doesn't wall splat or confirm anything, it's just there to look cool. And if you throw a charged heavy from top, it will knock the enemy to the ground instead. Lastly, from a backstab guard break, he will simply throw a punch which will deal 5 damage. This is simply another funny move which I like to add to my heroes, and it would probably be really funny to finish people off with it. Mid-chain. His chain attacks are the exact same as Lawbringer's. It's a 3-hit chain, and you can never throw 2 lights in a row. The chain heavies are 1000 MS and have hyper armor starting at 100 MS, just like Magi. Fallen can do a special mid-chain zone, which is a cool looking spinny move and resets the chain back to square 1, dealing a total of 5 plus 10 damage. You also have access to 1 dodge cancel after performing a chain zone, because it reminds me of Guts' powerful yet agile style of fighting. After any heavy, including dodge attacks in both his zones, he can throw a pommel strike, which will guarantee a light, and also resets the chain back to square 1. Finally, he can soft feint any chain heavy into another heavy from any direction, making it unblockable and also feintable. Half sorting. It's a more basic version of Highlander's offensive stance, because while in Highlander's case that's like half his moveset, with this hero it's just a small addition. That said, they both work basically the same, but Fallen only has access to 400 MS lights, and a bash which isn't feintable, but knocks the enemy to the ground, dealing 30 damage. That means no unblockables, no dodge cancels, and no soft feinting a bash into another bash, unlike Highlander. Punishes. From a heavy parry, you get a light, or you can press the guard break button to throw a backhand strike, which will deal 4 damage, knock the enemy to the ground, and guarantee a light for a total of 16 damage. On a guard break, you can get a zone for 24 damage, but if you press the light input, Fallen will impale the enemy pretty much like Warmonger, and if it hits a wall, it will punch the enemy instead of slashing it, dealing a total of 25 damage, draining a decent amount of stamina out of the opponent, and knocking him to the right, potentially ledging. And on a light parry, you get a normal heavy, or again, your backhand strike. How and why everything fits together. You guys know I'm a fan of complex movesets, and I like having to choose between several options instead of always having one that clearly stands above all the others, be it openers, chain offense, or any defensive option really. That's why this character can choose to open people up with enhanced lights, hyper armor heavies, or unblockable charged heavies that of course take longer to actually throw. You can also slowly go into your half sorting stance and then open people up with 400 MS lights which have really short range. So, while all of these technically work as openers, none of these options are overbearing, and it's done by design. I'm not giving him a neutral bash because I actually want you to think about what you throw. You can't light spam with him either, but you can throw a light zone chain infinitely, and since the chain zone comes pretty fast, it can be considered an infinite light chain. But the caveat to that is that the zone only comes from one side, making it predictable. And now let me explain why his chain offense is actually really deep. You can only throw chain bash after heavy attacks, which incentivizes you to throw heavies more, which is all of what this character is about, because while his light attacks are incredibly good, they don't offer as good a chain pressure. So after doing a heavy, here are the number of things you can do. a light attack that's enhanced and has a huge hitbox but doesn't lead anywhere, a bash that doesn't have a follow-up if whipped, a chain zone which is fast, catches both empty dodges and dodge attacks alike, but deals very little damage and only comes from one side, and an enemy with decent reactions will be able to parry the second hit if they block the first one, a heavy which has hyper armor, deals a lot of damage, catches dodge attacks, but can still be blocked if the enemy just empty dodges due to how slow it is. On another hand, you can also soft feint a heavy into an unblockable if you're willing to put up with how slow that is, because it has the danger of being interrupted, because the unblockable heavy doesn't actually have hyper armor. And lastly, a ForHonor MS Light, which is very similar to the bash in the sense that it's faster, but can be blocked, full blocked, or even externally blocked if you're in a teamfight, not to mention the lack of range. The other grappling attack I mentioned can be used for ganking, or when you predict that the enemy is going to empty dodge in any situation. You're essentially getting 30 damage for a hard read, which I think is fair. This philosophy is even present on his punishes, be it on parry or GB. You always have access to a quick move which deals average damage, or a better move that requires more time to set up, drains more stamina out of you, and has other requirements like, will I even hit this wall in the first place? That is why I think this moveset would work great, because it's a bunch of different abilities that you can choose from, while not having a single one that clearly stands above the others. Not to mention, it's a pretty deep moveset for ForHonor standards, and it even has some funny stuff like the neutral punch that deals 5 damage or the Dark Souls uppercut. And now, let's get on with the feats. This is where this character truly shines. Tier 1. Adrenaline Strikes. When Fallen runs out of stamina, he can still throw any attack in his repertoire. That includes lights, heavies, dodge attacks, you name it. However, that comes at the cost of each attack he throws dealing 4 damage to himself, meaning this guy barely cares about running out of stamina, because even if he runs out of stamina, he can just keep going. But if you get parried or thrown, you will still get thrown to the ground. You may think this feat is too good for tier 1, but honestly, running out of stamina isn't nearly as dangerous as it used to be, and it barely happens nowadays. Tier 2. Make Room. Fallen will swing a sword in a 360-degree motion, with the speed of a Highlander zone attack dealing 25 damage, and dealing knockback to anyone struck by it, including teammates. This move is unblockable and has instant hyper armor upon activation. It can be used when surrounded by multiple people, when being ganked, or in a teamfight, and can be used for option selecting enemy attacks mid-chain because of the instant hyper armor. Just like Yorm's tier 4. You still need skill to use this, however, because it can easily be parried if predicted, and since it only deals 25 damage, if you try to option select an unblockable, it might end on a worse health rate for you. Tier 3. Flesh Devourer. Killing an enemy will add 30 HP to this ability, which you can access anytime you want to heal. If you kill 2 enemies, this ability will heal you 60 HP, and you can stack it until it heals all your HP so long as you keep killing enemies. So, for it to be just as good as Second Wind, you need to kill at least 1 enemy. And if you want it to be better than that, well, you have to kill more. And Fallen has 140 HP, so if you want to heal your entire health bar, you have to kill 5 enemies. 5 enemies for 1 entire HP bar. I think that's a worthy reward if you ask me. Assists don't count either. It has to be you the one to deal the killing blow. Not to mention, this ability will disappear if you die. And finally, Tier 4. Death's Door. The lower the health he has, the more damage he will deal. If you're at 100% HP, the damage boost you receive with this Tier 4 will be 0%. If you're at 50% HP, your damage boost will be 25%. And if you're at 1 HP, the damage boost you receive will be 50%. And the closer Fallen is to dying, the more he will glow with a small red aura akin to Warmonger when getting her tier 3. Would this be OP? I mean, for comparison, Fear itself gives you a 50% damage boost for 20 seconds that is applied to all enemies around you, meaning you can get double or even triple the benefit if you're in a teamfight, so I think it's fair for a tier 4. I would say all these feats take skill to use, and as secondary feats, I'd give them Bounty Hunter, Executioner's Respite, Fury, and Auto Revive. That way you can have 2 archetypes for this character. Number 1, the guy that heals himself massively after killing 1 enemy if you use Bounty Hunter, Executioner's Respite, Flesh Devourer, and Auto Revive. Or you can be a complete berserker that deals massive damage wherever he goes and doesn't care about his own life if you use Adrenaline Strikes, Make Room, Fury, and Death's Door. Or you can go for a mix of the 2. I will pat myself on the back here and say that this is a brilliant idea for our hero, and I will say that I could definitely see myself playing this hero for like months without running out of fun. But I guess I'll never know until I see it in action. That's it for today. Like and comment to see more of these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.